All right, so they say in this concluding chapter on Reformed Apologetics that they'll summarize the model or paradigm for apologetics and then consider its major strengths and weaknesses. Because of the diversity of methods, though, within the traditions, they're going to branch off and kind of split it up because Gordon Clark and Cornelius Van Til offer two special emphasis for these methods, and especially when it comes to Van Til. So it's hard when you want to do Big Tent, because at some point you have to look and see that there are different tickets to the different shows. So
different entries to the tent there.
That's right. That's right. You have to step right up to something.
Yeah. And so what they're going to do here is they're going to summarize each of the models of apologetic, what they've been doing under two headings, right? They started that in chapter 3, Meta-Apologetics and Apologetics. And then they have 6 specific questions under each of these headings. And so in this particular chapter here, they'll apply this analysis, this meta-apologetics and apologetics, to the Reformed model. And we'll look at, so it'll be about 12 questions that they'll work through here. And then we'll look at a kind of a strengths and weaknesses of this particular position.
Right. All right, so the Reformed Apologetic model, as explained in Chapter 3, they'll summarize the model here, and then they'll take the analysis. But the meta-apologetic questions are questions that deal with the relation of apologetics to other forms of human knowledge. So they'll consider the approach taken in Reformed Apologetics to answering questions about knowledge in general, theology, philosophy, science, history, and then experience. The one that we all like, that no one will ever disagree with. I've had an experience, and I'm going to tell you about it.
Yeah. All right. So let's start with, this notion of knowledge, right? And so they jump right in. And the question here is, on what basis do we claim that Christianity is the truth, right? What's the basis for the truth claims of Christianity? And of course, as we've seen, classical apologists seek to demonstrate the truth of Christianity by establishing first the theistic worldview using primarily deductive reasoning, right? So, the kind of reasoning that if the premises are true, they guarantee the truth of the conclusion. So that's deductive reasoning. So that's classical apologetics. And then once theistic worldview is kind of reasoned to by the classical apologist, and then they try to show that Christianity then is the most coherent or well-supported theistic religion. So that's their two-step approach, right? They reason to a theistic God, and then they show that Christianity is the most coherent or well-supported theistic religion. That's classical. Evidentialists seek to build a cumulative case for Christianity through historical and scientific evidences. And so using arguments that are, primarily, we would say, inductive in form, or we can call them probability arguments, right? It's pretty tough to go back and say, this is exactly what happened in history kind of thing, right? And so these are probability arguments. Reformed apologists, our authors tell us, consider both of these approaches somewhat flawed.
Right. And so Van Til, being very critical of those two methods, he considers deductivism an inadequate philosophy of logic, but agrees that the apologetics cannot rest on an inductive examination of facts either. So, well, then what do you do if you're not given deductive or inductive? You go to the abductive route, you come up with something new. Well, his solution was to show through transcendental reasoning the foundation on which both deduction and induction rest. So take a step back and say, what basis do those two things, which we would say are useful, they can help establish truthful claims, where do they rest? And so that's what Van Til does here by taking a step back and looking at a transcendental reading. Only Christian theism.
Yeah. So what I was going to say is basically what he does is he doesn't let the unbeliever get away with assuming induction and deduction,
Right.
right? He's going to say, well, wait a minute. You're assuming that, we can reason correctly and that logic and so forth is the case. I want an argument for why you believe that's the case, right? Why is logic? Why is, for instance, the principle of non-contradiction, the law of non-contradiction? Why is that the case? And so he's not going to let the unbeliever get away with those assumptions. He's going to say that, no, you're stealing those assumptions from Christian belief systems. And so you need to justify that. And he's going to argue they cannot do that. And therefore, they have no grounds for those types of, claims outside of the Christian religion. And so that's kind of where he's coming from. And that's the transcendental. In order for deduction and induction to be meaningful, you have to have a God who grounds those particular ways of reasoning.
Right. And if you've been on our YouTube page and look at the comment section for the short clips, you'll notice a lot of people in our comment section wanting to just say, well, we use science because it works really, really well. Yeah. But then when you ask them to justify the ability to use that, or, why would that be a case according to your worldview? Well, then, we're wanting to plant our feet solely on the basis, well, it just works. Oh, okay, but there's no justification there, and so we saw how that kind of peters out. Well, only Christian theism provides this foundation or presuppositions that allow us to do both deduction and induction. Human reasoning and ethical judgments presuppose a God who is supremely rational and good, and who has made human beings in his image. And so how are we able to do that? Because we're made in the image of God, and we're given certain faculties like having his law written on our heart for Christians, but also having a conscience, and also being able to reason because God is a reasoned being, and he's built within us the ability to kind of share that quality that he has as well.
Right. We're made in God's image, and therefore we can kind of reason after God, right? Follow his way of reasoning, God's thoughts after him, so to speak. Uh-huh. All right. So that's the presuppositionalist or the reformed view of knowledge, and specifically truth, right? The next question, this meta-ethical question, or meta-apologetic question, rather, that our authors deal with, is what is the relationship between apologetics and theology? All right. And so Reformed apologists agree with evidentialists with this one over against the classical apologists that apologetics and theology deal with the same subject matter, and should use essentially the same method. However, Reformed apologists disagree with the inductive empirical method, as we've seen advocated by the evidentialists. According to Reformed apologists, in a consistently reformed method, the truth of Scripture should be presupposed in both theology and apologetics, and specific truths deduced from the statements or propositions given in Scripture. So notice here, there's a combining. Apologetics is just a kind of part of theology. There's no separation, right? And as we'll see here, the classical apologist really wants to kind of say, well, apologetics is more philosophy than theology, although there's some bridge between the two. Reformed apologists say, no, they're basically attached, we might say, right? They're the same kind of discipline.
Mm-hmm.